I want to welcome you all to the O Museum and in the mansion. My name is H. Leonard. I'm the founder of the museum. 45 years ago, February 14th, 1980, and we did it with no money, no business background, no art background, no design background. It is extraordinary what you can do in this country with nothing. I also made a conscious decision that everything I made was to give back, because if you die, you can't take it with you. So I am also in the same place I was 45 plus years ago. I am the happiest person you'll ever meet, because it's about giving. Our first Sunday gospel performance has started when Mrs. Rosa Parks lived with me for 10 years. And we have started them again, thanks to Reverend Fred and his wife. And this is our second journey, and I so look forward to listening, learning from you all, and just feeling the joy. Thank you.
Hello. I'm so excited. I really am excited. Thank you so much, H. And thank you, Ted, for providing this venue, this absolutely wonderful venue for what I think is going to be the continuation of an absolutely marvelous tradition that you started many years ago. I thought Jesse was going to be here, and I talked to Jesse a few. Jesse is my program director at a station in Nashville that I provide a gospel show on Sunday morning, actually. But she and I go back to XM before it was Sirius. Yeah, it was still XM then. But the accolades that I give to her, and every time I go out, I try to do that for Jessie Scott, because she's just an absolutely enormous and amazing woman, person, and has provided this opportunity through H and Ted for us to be here this afternoon. So I am so grateful and will forever be indebted to Jessie Scott, indeed. But welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think we're going to have an absolutely marvelous afternoon. And I'm not going to, we don't have but so much time, and I am a talker, for sure. I've been in radio for over 20 years. If I don't know how to do anything else, I believe I can talk. But we're just going to, as I told Esther, when we've talked back and forth, more than just a Q&A, I just want to have a conversation. You know, sometimes you think you know people because you've had casual conversations with them and you've seen them in different venues doing what they do, but then you read their bios and you say, oh, I didn't really know. I thought I knew, but I really don't know. But these are absolutely marvelous people, and for them to be a couple and still continuing to work together in the same work over these many years, to me is absolutely phenomenal. Now I must say, before I get to introducing them to you, I am a little excited, and I told Davey and Esther both that I'm a little excited this afternoon. I go to chapel at Crampton Auditorium. I'm an HU graduate, as Roy is as well. We got some more HU in the house. You know. But stop hating, Murphy. Stop hating, Murphy. But anyway, so I was there this morning, and Dr. Cornell West was there this morning. And Cornell and I are fraternity brothers. I don't agree with everything, but this morning he was on point. Oh, he was on fire this morning, let me tell you. And his theme was this morning, in times like these. In times like these. And he went to different places in bringing this all together. But as as I was sitting there and listening to him, I thought about our guests. And as the arts are under attack, and have been, not just in this administration, but have been for years. In times like these, I do believe that the one thing that can bring us all together and carry us through is music. Is music. And I just feel so honored to bring to you these guests this afternoon, because as I said, I've known them individually. I've met them individually and had known them for a couple, but met them individually in their own spaces. And that's what's so beautiful, because they own their own spaces even though they are a couple. And it's just a wonderful and a beautiful thing to get them. When I actually reached out and I said, man, will they do this? Are they going to do this? You know, I was, seriously, I didn't know. Are they going to do this? And when they agreed, I was like, whoa, here we go. Let's get it. But Esther Williams, and many of you already know Esther. Esther has done so many things, marvelous things on her own. Not just with her husband, but on her own, as a vocalist. But even before being a vocalist. Now, the interesting thing is, I told Esther that actually my wife. So Esther, and you correct me, you were Miss Black America, Miss DC, Miss Black DC. Did I get it right? I saw you turn your head. I said, oh God, that man didn't mess that up. Miss Black DC, am I right? Did I get it right? And so when I said that to my wife, and she said, but you weren't Miss Black DC, you were what?
It was in Miss District of Columbia.
Okay, all right.
That's when they transitioned from the Black DC to Miss District of Columbia. Because when I was Miss Black DC, Black people couldn't really participate in the overall pageant.
Okay.
That tells you how long ago it was.
Okay. There's some history though. I'm gonna let my wife tell you. There's some history behind why. Not now, but there's some history behind why she got involved, and it's probably has something to do with what you just said just now. But that being said, but I mean Esther, being at Forest Theater and Bother Me, Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. Fast Wallet, Ain't Misbehaving, just on and on and on. But I'm gonna tell you what really stands out to me, especially in regard to our theme of 51 Steps to Freedom, is what you and your husband have done collaboratively in regard to the Washington Jazz Arts Institute, organization that you all formed that's giving back. But I digress. Let me ask you, can I just go and get into it. Let's go and get into it. Let's just go and get into it. I want to ask the two of you a question. One, now this has been a burning thing, and I always ask people when I do interviews with people on the radio or whatever, are you a native Washingtonian, and what does that mean?
He is.
He is, okay.
I'm from Waukegan, Illinois.
Okay.
Somebody.
All right. See how that went?
But I moved here in 1968.
Okay, 1968.
Right after high school.
Okay, and what brought you to Washington, D.C.?
Two things, school, and I had a sister that moved here. And I had visited here several times already, and I knew this is where I wanted to be. I liked what I saw in terms of the Black community in D.C. I saw the things that I wanted to live in. I saw that D.C. had a Black population that was doing things. I saw Black people in all stations of life. My sister, I went to the bank with my sister. The bank president was Black. We were in the stores and the people handling the money were Black. you may not even recognize that as something, but it is something from somebody who comes from a Midwest town. Now, I had a healthy black community, but I grew up with, I grew up in a very diverse community also. But you know, sometimes it takes you getting older to realize what you were denied.
Davey. Now, I know Davey on a couple of different fronts. I do know him through his music as well, and all of his accomplishments, many of which, I mean, they just go on and on and on and on. But I know him most recently from the golf course. And the thing about knowing Davey on the golf course is because he's such a humble man. I never knew if he shot a 62 or 112. Because he'd be the same dude when he comes off the golf course and put his bag back in. Because I generally see him in the parking lot. I'm coming and he leaving. Because he gets there earlier than me. But that speaks to what I know about Davey in spite of his many accomplishments in his chosen field of music and education, is that he just always presents himself, one, as a gentleman and as an educator. And he's so humble. And sometimes humility can be confused with other things. And I know that firsthand. But sometimes when I see people, and you stare, sometimes you have to observe people, just kind of watch them. But oftentimes in our society, we don't give people enough time to watch them. Don't just listen to them, but watch people. He's one of the most, if he's as consistent as he is in his persona as he is on the golf course, he's got to be shooting 62. Because he's just so, he's right here. All the time, every time I see Dave, he's always approachable, has a kind word, but he's done so much. But again, as I said to his wife Esther, what gets me so much about him and them is their commitment to this community and giving back from their chosen profession to the people, particularly young people in Washington, D.C. So without further ado, I'm going to get, Davey, I want to ask you the same question that I asked your wife, and she's already revealed that you are a native Washingtonian. So yes, you're a native Washingtonian. What does that mean?
It means so much to me at this stage, and I don't mind saying that I'll be 72 next year, but
a baby.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cornell said he was 71, so y'all, you run in good country.
I think Cornell is telling the tale.
You think he lying? You think he lying? He could be lying. But go ahead.
It is, and it has been and is a blessing to me to have been afforded the life that I am afforded even at this time. And I would like for the world to have the type of experiences, and I like for the world to have an opportunity to really digest the beauty in this world that started with being born in Washington, D.C. And I know that sounds weird right now at these times, but I'm still here. And that's one of the phrases that I've been saying for years, when things change,
You're still here.
they change and they change again, and they change again. But for some odd reason, my Creator keeps me here and keeps me energized, and also allows me to understand that I can use who I am, just like the folks who use who they are and who they were to instill in me the energy to pass it on.
That's excellent. Let's
That's an
dovetail
amen.
off of that right. That is an amen. But no, before we amen, I want to see, and I was going to get to that. So what in the two of you, what has been from your growing up, from your family background, that instilled in you a passion for the arts, obvious activism? What made you, you spoke to some degree about why you left the Midwest to come to Washington, D.C., and I share that same story. I didn't come from the Midwest, I came from Texas, but our stories, what you said pretty much is aligned with why I came to Washington, D.C. But what in your background growing up instilled your whole musicality, your activism? What drew you to Davey, if I'm not being too personal?
Quite a few things.
She said, somebody say amen.
When I came up in Waukegan, Illinois, we had a insular black community. I went to a school with lots of white kids, had a lot of white friends. You know what happens when you're coming up, you got a lot of white friends when you're in elementary school, then you go to junior high, y'all start separating, then you go to high school, you start separating even more. I still keep some of those friends. But in 1963, 64, I participated in a walkout at school. Because of some stuff that was
High school?
High school.
Okay.
Well, yeah, barely in high school, yeah.
Okay.
But some things that were going on, and my mother was like, and my father was like, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay.
So I understood from my dad, who came from Mississippi and who would never take us to Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
We asked him when we were going to see where he came from. He said, I ain't never taken you to Mississippi. He said, because you all were raised in the North and you don't know how to behave in Mississippi. He said you would go down there and get hurt. No, I mean, that's real. So, but
That is real. That's real.
I didn't understand it. So my father had an activist thread in him. He was a laborer.
Okay.
My mother, on the other hand, was educated in the South. She went all the way
Was
through.
she from Mississippi too?
Yep, Mississippi too. And she
Okay.
went all the way through college. She taught elementary school in the South, and when they moved north in 1939, her credentials were not accepted. She couldn't teach school. My mother lived out the rest of her life as a domestic.
Oh my.
So, if there is a reason for activism, that is it. My daughter right now is working on her PhD, and that was one of the things that got her into this PhD program. She wrote about my mother not being able to do that. So I didn't want to digress. I didn't want to.
That's not a digression. You're just putting it out there. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And so Dave and I met. He likes to tell a story. I'd like to leave that.
It's nice to hear you say.
We met on a gig. It was my gig. I had a record contract at the time, and he was in college. And his mentor, Art Dawkins, you might know who Mr. Dawkins is from Howard University. He sent Dave because he was supposed to do the gig with my producer, Eddie Drennan, and he couldn't do it, so he sent Dave. So that was our first meeting. We didn't connect or anything, but you know, I thought he was nice. I think he thought I was nice. The gig went well, and then we kept running into each other on other gigs, and then finally we wound up on a long time gig together and realized that we really did enjoy each other. We weren't dating, we were really becoming friends. You agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that the story was right. We were really becoming friends, so you know, it was really a friendship before it was a romance.
Okay.
And we came to like each other. And then I guess the rest is history. We've been married going on 46 years.
That is a man right there.
It's going on 47. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
47
okay.
years. Yeah.
Oh, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
That is a blessing. So, Davey, okay, I'm gonna go back to my question before in terms of what do you have to do to be a native Washingtonian? What does that mean? How many generations do you have to have been here to be a native Washingtonian?
Well, I am a third generation
You're a third, okay.
Washingtonian. I was born, I think to be a native Washingtonian, you just need to be born.
You just need to be born.
Yeah. So,
Okay, but some people think
and
you have to be here
that's
since emancipation.
but really, it's not even about being born here.
Okay.
It's about being here.
Ah,
And being here, because when I say native, I'm saying, and there's something to the fact that you are proud of the fact that
you live
this
here.
place
Is your
bore me.
Okay.
Okay, but then
Third generation. Your parents were born in North Carolina.
my parents were born in North Carolina, but my
This is married people talking here.
so my father moved here because his uncle lived here.
Okay.
So
That migration.
Yes,
Yeah,
right. So my parents were born in Lewisburg and Durham, North Carolina. And they both went to Central, which is where they met because my dad roomed in my mom's house.
Okay. Okay.
And the rest of that is history. But talking about native, you can look at the Webster's Dictionary
Right.
about the definition. Native means that it's your native land, this is where you were born.
Okay.
But I have come to see how DC has been embraced and loved by people who have moved here, like Esther,
Right.
and
me.
and bought into
Mm-hmm.
what is here, the culture and
Right.
the life, and never decided that they wanted to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, that's also native.
Okay.
Well, if I get straight with the definition, that's when somebody.
No. I asked you the question, so it's your definition.
Okay.
But I mean, because the reason why I asked it from that perspective is because I talk to so many people who defend their native Washingtonianism based on them having been here for 10 generations. And so I say, okay, well, if you haven't been here since your great-grandmama was here, you're not a native Washingtonian? And for some, if you haven't been here for more than so many generations, I mean in succession, for some people you're not. So that's why I asked the question. Now I mean, like I said, I asked you the question to get your definition, and your definition is what it is as it pertains to you. I agree with Esther, and I agree with what you said about Esther. I came here in 1980, and when I came to Washington, D.C., I told Mom and Dad I wasn't coming back to Texas. It was a wrap. So, I mean, I don't consider myself necessarily, once a Texan, always a Texan. But, I mean, Washington, D.C., though, is near and dear to my heart.
I'm from Waukegan, Illinois. If you ask me where I'm from, I will tell you. I was born and raised in Waukegan, Illinois. But one thing I know about Washingtonians,
Okay.
one thing I do know, don't say you're from D.C. if you ain't from D.C.
Oh, no.
Don't say you're not. Don't say
No,
that.
no,
So
no.
that's very clear to me.
That's for folks that haven't been here to experience the difference.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who come here from somewhere else and live here for a while, but they never really become Washingtonian. The organization that we run, the band that we built, the name is the New Washingtonians.
How about that?
So it's that itself says that you can be a Washingtonian. You have to buy into the culture.
Before we ask you all to give us a sample of your repertoire, I still want to ask you though, Davey, just as I asked your wife Esther, in regard to your in your growing up, what inspired your artistry, your education, activism? And I have to say, so I haven't mentioned it to you, but I did mention it to Esther in conversation, that I met one of your sisters at one of Cindy Williams' clothing events. And me and your sister talked. I know we talked 2 hours. We just talked and talked and talked. She told me about walking through the woods and bring home frogs. And your sister, that's the doctor. Bring home frogs and all this kind of stuff. But she also went into her whole other side of her as a medical doctor, but as an activist from a different perspective. So then I'm thinking, so there's something, should be something probably that's in this home that's encouraging or at least giving space to the thought of activism. So can you speak to that in regard to your music? You know, you played with Sir Roland Hannah, all these different people, you know what I mean? These are people they stretching, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just asking that from the perspective, I'm giving you the breadth and width to be able to kind of fill that in terms of your activism through your music.
Well, the activism is a part of the result of what is poured into me, because you come here with nothing. And your experiences guide you in terms of what your beliefs are and who you develop to be. So it's more than just stuff that happens, it's more of how you're prepared for it by your community. And when I say my community, I mean all the way from the angels that bore me, and their ancestors, because they brought me the history of how they were brought up. And then to go out into the world, and when I saw what I was brought up to be in other people in my community, and how they continue to develop me, it was very easy to say that, okay, how do I survive? I've been through a few things, great and not so great. But I keep saying, but I'm still here. But the reason I'm still here is because I can rely on the experience of others who survive. And if I'm surviving, then I can help the next generation do the same. And as a matter of fact, I actually owe that to my community.
Absolutely.
Can you get an amen for that?
Can you echo that?
I can echo that. When I was coming up, I didn't have a lot of formal music education, but I did sing in the choir, and we had a group at church. My church was Trinity Church. We were the Trinettes. And, we sang regularly in the church, and we had a group that sang also. We did the parties and all that kind of stuff. So I knew from the time I was in junior high school, I think, that I really wanted to sing. My father taught me harmony without even knowing it. We sang together. My father was a singer who didn't realize that dream. You know, he and his brothers back in Mississippi were the Williams brothers, and he was the one who taught the harmonies. So
Wow.
when I'd come home with a son, he didn't go to church with us. They sent us to church.
Okay,
I
but
come
you
home,
went.
Yeah. That's how I learned all the hymns and all that. And I come home singing the hymn, and he'd harmonize with it with me, and I didn't even realize that he was teaching me harmony at the time. And he was always encouraging me when we did the talent shows, and he was happy with us rehearsing in the living room, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, my father was instrumental in that. And I come from kind of a musical family too. I have other cousins who are doing big things musically as well. I say as well as if what I'm doing is big. What I'm doing is what they're doing.
It is big.
But I knew, so I was driven.
Okay.
I was driven. I always knew that I wanted to be a singer. And I gotta tell you, early in my career, someone told me, well, you need to get another job, you know. I paid them no mind. My father did that to me. You know, he was the one who said, don't let anybody tell you what you are or what you can't be. He said, you're doing nothing but getting better. You'll get better, whatever you do. And I'll tell you this also. My father spent time with me, talking to me about being the dark-skinned child in the house. Y'all might not all understand that, but it was, and I was darker when I was younger. I don't know how that happened. I faded as I got older or something. No, really, it's true. It's true. I'll show you some pictures of me. And my sister says it's because I stayed in the sun all the time. But he spent a lot. He was a very dark-skinned man who had very bad experiences in Mississippi. He never would talk about it completely.
Yeah.
But he spent a lot of time telling me, yeah, you just as pretty as the rest of them, and you just as this. He spent a lot of time on me with that. So nobody, I had self-assurance probably when I shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's a whole game. If I got in on that right there, as I say, I come from sociologists and historians and educators, and that's a tangent that will go way over there. And we don't need to do that, but you spoke enough about it though, that even though you've evolved into where you are now, but what gets me, it was your father who was encouraging you and who was lifting you up and telling you you can. No matter what now I'm not saying that your mother didn't, but you mentioned your father, and that's why I'm saying that.
I do, because my father had gone through some real stuff. And my mother had too. Somehow I think my mother kind of just like resigned herself to it. You know, she went through all the school, she did the work, and then she couldn't teach school. You know, she couldn't teach school in the North.
Really? Even in the North?
No,
when she left Mississippi.
When they left Mississippi, she was teaching elementary school. When she moved to Illinois, when they moved to Illinois, her credentials were not accepted in the North. So that's something that sticks with me, and I don't know what my mother would have done had she been able to fulfill the person she was. Now, she was the one who would catch us with English and make us do our homework and all that kind of stuff. She still was about that, but my father was more of a free spirit. More of a free spirit and more of a, yeah, you want to do that, do that. You know.
Wow, that's beautiful. Have you enjoyed this conversation so far? This is wonderful. I'm just overjoyed. I can get everything I can get in an hour, but I know somebody want to hear some singing.
Yeah.
I know you do. I know you do. And some playing. So, can we get a little bit? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. And thank you, ladies and kids, so much. Thank y'all so much. This really is a, while they're setting up, I can share this with you. I don't know if I did it last time or not. This is actually a prayer coming into realization. Actually, my wife and I are working together on a project like this. And it shouldn't be taken lightly when they say God moves in mysterious ways, but his wonders to perceive. You see, because he does things in his own time. And it's not always when we want him to do things, but I've always wanted, and she and I have always done things kind of together, but not like this. And I feel so blessed to be able to do a project like this with my wife, and looking at Esther and looking at Davey and I see them as people I want to reach to. Just amazing people.
We feel blessed to work together too. And we cultivated that over our time together. And people have said to us, how do y'all work together? We do, and we love it. And it's who we are.
So do they say.
Lord, dear Lord above, God Almighty, God of love, oh please look down and see my people through. Lord, dear Lord of love, God Almighty, God above, oh, please look down and see my people through. I believe that God put sun and the moon up in the sky. I don't mind the skies, 'cause they're just clouds passing by. The leaves in the valley, they neither talk nor sing, and the flowers bloom at springtime, birds sing. But he knows our every care. Go to But we do it a lot.
It never comes out the same.
Never, ever.
It never comes
Ever,
out the
ever,
same.
ever.
And that's the beauty of the music that we do.
Of the music.
That it actually takes in the atmosphere and evolves through us. So no, did we plan what we just did? We
Some
talked about
of it.
doing it. We talked about doing it. I don't know if you saw her give me instructions.
Right. We're working together, yeah.
We are winding down, but I would like, if you all have any questions that you would like to ask Esther Williams or Davey Yarborough.
I have a question. So, first of all, I am so grateful to be in the presence of a Black couple that is still together. That is fantastic. Thank you. And we're not quite as old as you are, but when you were talking, I didn't mean to say it like that.
As old in marriage, right?
Yes, old in marriage. Old in marriage.
I own my blessing.
No.
Oh, my.
That didn't come out right, but I honor you because our children who are in their 30s, I think we're maybe one of three children and all of their friends that their parents are still together. So to be able to see you guys and working together is fantastic. So I am going to take over. He's my husband. He knows how I am. So I know that you have a connection to Duke Ellington. I went there for a semester when I was in school. I went though for theater, not for music.
So you had Annalise and Fred Lee. And
I'm not remembering the names, but I just wanted to ask you about Duke Ellington and what does that mean for DC, knowing who Duke Ellington is as a person and then with the school. And then also the other question is, how does music, because I'm more of the musician in the family than he is. He plays music, I sing. But what does music do for you? How does it help you with your spirit, with wherever you're feeling at that moment? And if you can tie that into Duke Ellington and that whole teaching, because there's some things that you just feel and you can't necessarily teach. And so talk about that and how you're bringing along this current generation who has its own experience.
well, I was the first instrumental music student teacher at Duke Ellington School of the Arts because of some of my mentors. And when I was introduced, and I really have to give you a little backstory. In high school, and I was self-taught until I got to college, I was in bands, but I was imitating what the guy sitting next to me was doing, and I fooled a few of the band directors. So in high school, Jesse Adams, who is still with us, thank God, pulled me aside because, you know, when you're not sure about what you're doing, you try to divert the attention however you can. Well, I did this with Jesse Adams, and he pulled me in the corner and said, look, one of these days, you're going to be sitting in my seat having to deal with people just like you. And I said, no way. I will not teach. Well, as fate or God would have it, I got my associate's degree as I was actually invited to Fellow City College on scholarship, and by one of my current mentors as well, Bobby Felder, for those who know him, and he invited me to come to Fellow City on a full scholarship. And I had 5 brothers and sisters, so you know what the answer was. In my second year, I got my associate degree, and I was out. I said, I'm getting ready to get out of here. I'm going on the road, blah, 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 blah. And Bobby pulled me aside and with the rest of the professors and said, well, what can you do with an associate's degree that you couldn't already do with a high school diploma? Stopped me in my tracks. And so he said, so go on and get a 4-year degree. I don't care if you get it in a bachelor's degree. And I couldn't argue, so I did. He said, you want scholarship? You're on the dean's list, good, you know. you can do 2 more years. And I said I could do that. Well, they sent me on a practical to Jefferson Junior High School and put me with Winston Hall, who was the band director there, wonderful pianist. And he gave me the clarinet students, he gave me the flute students, and because I had those as well. But he said, look, you whip them up, you get them ready because they're beginners and I want them to move to the next level next year. So as I'm teaching them, and it wasn't horrible, but it was actually sort of fun. But one day I heard while I was working on one student behind me, I heard this loud noise, wham! And I turned around and his flute was wrapped around the chair. And what happened? And you know what they all said. I don't know. Well, we figured out he had been frustrated. He wasn't achieving what he wanted to achieve like the rest of the folks. We got him another flute. And one day he walked into the room and his eyes were this big. And he said, Mr. Yarborough, I got it. And he got me. Because I said, whatever, I don't know what I did. I don't know what we did. But to see him turn around and be excited told me that, well, I might be missing something here. And that's what started but I've had multitudes. Ellington, by the way, I was talking about things happen and changes come in. Well, in 1978, if you all may remember that Ronald Reagan discontinued teaching hours in the city. Well, 1978 is when I got my bachelor's degree, and Ellington decided that after my student teaching, they liked it. They hired me. By the time it was time for me to start, those hours were taken away. Last hired, first fired. But I'm still here.
How many years at Ellington?
At Ellington was 38. At DC Public Schools, 42.
Wow.
And there's a long story going. I know we're short on time, so that'll have to be on the next one. But the evolution to the Washington Jazz Arts Institute was also a byproduct of my experience at Ellington. Teachers, those who have taught, have lost students. And in Washington, D.C., you lose some students into the street. And never wanting to have to go through that again. I had one student, while I was actually the counselor there as well. While I was counseling, a young man was killed in Rock Creek Park, murdered in Rock Creek Park. And nobody knew. This guy was in his first year at the Art Institute in New York. He was on full scholarship. No one knew, and it was my first experience with drug dealing. He was dealing, and apparently he did something wrong, and he was retaliated. And that changed my whole world. That's the first one that changed my world. And then I had a drummer who was killed in the street in Southeast. And I decided that I didn't want to not know where my students were. And I came up with the idea of just teaching them in the summer for free and telling them to come on. And one thing led to the other, and I asked my partner here if she would buy into the dream of having an organization that would teach young people for free and mentor them and guide them. And we've had the success of over 1,000 kids to graduate and move on.
And how many years is that?
And this is our 27th year.
I understand that whole experience. I worked with kids in Montgomery County for several years. A lot of people don't think there's public housing in Montgomery County, but there is public housing in Montgomery County. And I worked with kids in public housing in Montgomery County for years. But then when I left there to go to New York, and I got messages back from some of the kids that I worked with, and some of the same experiences, some of the kids, particularly boys, that I worked with directly, who had succumbed to the streets. And it does take its toll on you. It does, and, you know, especially if they're kids that you saw a future, you saw something that was going to happen, could happen, you know, and then you hear that things went another way. But anyway, Esther, and then if we could get one more tune, maybe if we have enough time. But anyway, I want to ask you this, Esther. I want to ask you this. We talked about this last night because I mentioned Ronnie Wells, and then I went and read. You called me again because Ronnie Wells was actually on Davey's bio. But anyway,
I knew Ronnie.
Yeah, I know you did. I know you did. But I mentioned it. I mentioned Ronnie Wells because my wife also studied under Ronnie Wells, right? And but you mentioned another gentleman.
Eddie Jackson.
Yeah, so if you can elaborate and speak to that whole experience.
Mr. Jackson was amazing. I had a record contract in the 70s, and I was introduced to him, and I was having I was up against a wall. I couldn't get the work done in the studio. It was really very frustrating. Then when you know, it's a head thing. A lot of it is a head thing, and they introduced me to Mr. Jackson, who was teaching at Duke Ellington at the time. And he was at Duke, were you there at the time? Yeah, he was at Duke Ellington at the time, but I got private lessons from him, and he helped me get through this thing I was dealing with my throat and all of that. And he also taught Denise Graves, and I don't know if you know Silver Logan Sharp, but he told me once, he said, well, while you're not doing the classical stuff, he said, you and Silver are my shining stars in the R&B and jazz. It really made me feel good. But I worked with him up until a few years ago. He just died a few years ago. So, and I also had an instructor in New York, Professor Edward Boatner. He was a character. He was Stanley Turrentine's father.
Wow.
Sonny Stitt's father. I'm sorry,
Sonny
I turned
Stitt's
that
father.
around. Sonny Stitt's father, yeah. But I got introduced to him in New York, so I was working in New York at the time, so whenever I was there, I took lessons from him also. I took piano from Judy Corey at UDC. And there was what was that music school over in Northeast?
Modern School of Music. Oh, Northeast.
At Northeastern Church over there, they had a music school way back when, and I went there for almost 2 years, just tightening up my reading and my vocal skills and all of that kind of stuff. And I will say this real quickly. Bernice Johnson Reagan from Sweet Honey in the Rock told me once, she said, you always have to take lessons. She said, you always have to. She still took them. She still had lessons. So she said, you always have to find somebody you can take lessons from. I don't have anybody right now because Dr. Jackson passed away, but I'm looking for somebody who can, can work with me.
David, that sounds like golf, doesn't it? You always need lessons.
No. So, in case you didn't know,
Okay.
the reason I was asked, matter of fact, the great Keita Betts,
Keita Betts,
bass
my
player
man.
for Ella Fitzgerald for 27 years.
Yep.
Was also a mentor.
Yeah.
Bobby Felder actually had his own tournament. All of them,
yeah.
they gave me clubs, they tried to get me to take lessons, I wouldn't do it.
Why did you go out?
My wife said, you need a hobby.
Wait, hold on.
This is the
What?
wife-
You shaking your head. What's
this is the
up?
wife telling her husband to go.
To go play golf.
Play golf. She and
He didn't understand though that he needed it.
I
It
did.
was too
And I did.
intense.
Right.
And he said, well, I got the music. I said, that's your job, and you need something for yourself. I was playing softball, I was playing volleyball, I was roller skating, I was doing all that stuff. He would go skating with me every now and then. But I was doing all of that, and he didn't have anything for himself. And I said, you need to go with them. You need to try it. He's out there now.
I had gotten rid of the golf clubs that I had been given. So one Father's Day, she got together with my daughter and bought me clubs. And I said, okay, well, will you all go out to the golf course with me?
Oh. Okay.
You know, so I can try them out, and they went.
Oh, okay.
I said, well, this is cool. You know?
Yeah.
So we played, and that when we were done, I said, so you all gonna keep coming out with me? They said, no.
No. Yeah, I figured that. But after he does use them, I can attest to that, because I've seen him on the golf course.
It is great therapy. It is great therapy. The being out, and I love to be out, but it's almost like music in terms of the focus.
Yeah.
Because if you don't focus,
Yeah, it won't go well.
Right. But
You can focus and it still might not go well.
exactly. And the fellowship is great.
Yeah.
But the personal therapy.
Yeah.
Because I love to go out by myself, and I love to be out
Yeah, I
early
do too.
with the animals and everything.
Yeah.
It's one of the best things that happened to me, just like her.
See that? Boy, he's smart too, isn't he? Come on,
Can
come on.
we get back to
Go ahead,
the
go ahead.
Washington Jazz Arts Institute?
Indeed.
I want to be clear. We've been hosted by our church, People's Congregational Church, which is our
People's in the house.
People's in the
People's in the house, come on. I've been there too,
We
yeah.
have been, that's our site where we hold our program.
Okay.
And for over 20 years.
Sure.
And I gotta tell you, there have been times, I have learned some stuff that I never knew I needed to know, in terms of writing grants and all that kind of stuff. That's not what I told them many times, I said, that ain't what I came here for. But then you have a kid who just excels, or a kid who comes to you and just hugs you up, and you know, because they're so happy that they got their music and they're doing what they're doing. And another thing that we do that a lot of people do not know,
They come back.
and they come back. They do
Yeah.
come
How
back.
about that?
Half our staff are graduates.
Yes, half of our staff came through our programs and
Wow.
came back to work with us.
That's a
We
blessing.
even have kids, a kid showed up last year with his friend. Just showed up, didn't sign up, nothing. You know? And I said, Dave, are you gonna take him? Dave said, yeah, I'm gonna take him. Because he needed to be there.
Right,
You know,
right.
and we also get instruments from you folks who have them in your closets. In your attics, we get your instruments and we repair them. And when a kid needs an instrument, we give them one. Because why? Because they need to have their own instruments. And we have angels who support us regularly. As a matter of fact, one of our board members, Pat Ellis, is here. And everybody in this room, two of our board members, and everybody, many of the people in this room have supported us. And many times early on, we just we spent our own money. But now we're starting to occasionally get grants and that kind of thing, you know. It's a labor of love.
And they also perform in the church. They
Yes.
also do part of the service.
They perform in our church as well, and we take them out to different places, like the Soldiers Home and different churches, and they perform at the Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival. And
When you perform regularly, so you perform regularly at the Mid-Atlantic.
yes,
Yeah.
we do.
One of the things when you mentioned, because you said Ronnie Wells is on my resume,
Okay. Yep.
Dr. Dawkins, who introduced me to my wife,
Okay.
also introduced me to Ronnie Wells. Ronnie was the first vocalist who let me sit in the nightclub at the top of the Foolery years ago.
Okay.
And we were friends. When she tried to she had the festival here once, and she couldn't afford to stay in the district. But we went around for a year, and I went with her a lot, trying to find spots. But she's another one. You know, I talk about the mentors. Without the mentors, I couldn't be here.
Right. And as I said, I mentioned Ronnie Wells because she was a mentor to my wife,
Right.
and she studied in Ronnie's house
Yeah.
for years, you know, and because of Ronnie Wells, she actually won the Billie Holiday Jazz competition over in Baltimore, and she studied studying under Ronnie Wells. And when I saw all this, and I told her, I said, "Oh wow, see how these things just connect up together." You know what I mean? Sometimes we look at it as being serendipity. That's just God. And with that, can we get a little bit more? Can we get another one?
Sure.
How about that?
You said
Y'all give it up, cause she said something. Oh, she gonna be the manager. That's the manager. All right, y'all give it up, huh? All right.
Sound like the way I volunteered you in church. There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know that it's the Spirit of the Lord.